My boss called me into his office late Friday afternoon, right when everyone else was packing up for the weekend. He didn't look up from his screen when he spoke. He just said, "We have a new hire starting today. I want you to train him." His tone was light, almost bored. Then he smiled and added, "You're good at explaining things." I waited for more. A promotion. A raise. Something. Instead, he leaned back and said, "This will help with the transition." That was the word that hit me. Transition. My chest tightened. I finally understood. This didn't help. This was a replacement. I nodded because that's what I always did. I was reliable. Quiet. Easy to manage. I walked out of his office feeling like the floor had dropped away. At my desk, I opened my notebook and gripped it too hard. My name is Naomi, and in that moment, I felt very small in that office. I had built the workflows he bragged about. I fixed problems no one else could solve. Now I was being erased politely. The new hire arrived 10 minutes later, smiling and nervous. I stood up, forced a calm voice, and said, "I'll show you how everything works." Inside, something shifted. If he wanted me to hand everything over, I would, just not the way he expected. I spent the rest of Friday training him like nothing was wrong. I showed him the basics. I explained the surface-level tasks. I answered his questions with patience. My boss watched from his glass office, clearly pleased. He thought I was cooperating. What he didn't see was how carefully I chose what to explain. There were systems I ran alone. Processes no one had written down. Contacts saved only in my head. I didn't hide anything illegally. I just followed my job description exactly. Nothing more. The new hire thanked me repeatedly. He seemed nice. That almost made it worse. He had no idea he was walking into someone else's life. Before leaving for the day, my boss stopped me near the door. "I appreciate your attitude," he said. "Some people would take this personally." He smiled like he'd taught me a lesson. I smiled back and said, "I understand." That night, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and reviewed my contract. Then company policy. Then system access rules. I took notes. Slow. Careful. Calm. By midnight, I realized something important, that I wasn't trapped. My boss believed control came from authority, that I was about to prove it came from knowledge. Over the weekend, I worked quietly from home. Not on company tasks, on understanding exactly where I stood. I read every clause of my employment agreement. I checked access logs. I reviewed responsibility charts that no one ever looked at. The more I read, the clearer it became. I hadn't just been doing my job. I had been holding the place together. There were systems only I maintained. Security permissions tied to my role. Vendor accounts registered under my name. None of it was secret. It just hadn't mattered, until now. On Sunday evening, I prepared for Monday. I followed the procedure. I submitted notices. I updated the documentation exactly as required. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't break rules. I simply stopped doing unpaid, undocumented work. Monday morning, I arrived early. The office felt the same, but I didn't. I sat at my desk, calm, waiting. At 9:07 a.m., I heard my boss's voice rise down the hall at 18910. IT rushed past my desk to 18912. The new hire looked confused. At 9:15, my boss stormed toward me and said, "Why can't I access anything?" I looked up slowly and said, "Because it was never yours to begin with." And that was only the beginning. My boss stood over my desk, red-faced, and shaking his phone like it had betrayed him. "Everything is locked," he snapped. "Files, dashboards, vendor access. Fix it." I stayed seated. My hands rested flat on the desk. "I didn't lock anything," I said calmly. "I just stopped using my credentials." His eyes narrowed. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke," I replied. "Those systems are tied to my role. You reassigned that role on Friday." He opened his mouth, then closed it. People nearby pretended not to listen, but the room felt frozen. IT arrived again, whispering to him. I heard words like permissions and single-point access. My boss's confidence cracked. He waved them away and leaned closer to me. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "We can still handle this the easy way." I looked up at him. "I already am. By the book." He straightened and said loudly, "Go home for the day. We'll talk later." I packed my bag slowly. As I walked out, I saw the new hire staring at his blank screen. By noon, my work phone buzzed nonstop at white evening. HR emailed me. And by night, I knew they were scared. HR called me first thing Tuesday morning. Their voices were soft and careful, like they were talking to glass. They asked if I was feeling stressed, if I needed support, if I wanted to smooth things over. I asked one simple question. Did I violate any policy? There was a pause. Then, no, that was all I needed to hear. Later that day, my boss sent me a message asking me to come to his office. When I walked in, he was smiling again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We value you here," he said. "This replacement idea may have been rushed." I nodded and said nothing. He continued, "If you restore access, we can forget this happened." I finally spoke. "Forget what?" His jaw tightened. "Don't be difficult." I leaned forward. "I followed my contract." "You didn't." That's when his tone changed. He threatened reviews, references, my future. Each word was meant to scare me back into place. It didn't work. I stood up and said, "If my role still exists, reinstate it. If not, we proceed formally." His smile vanished. As I reached the door, he said, "You think you've won?" I turned back. "No. I think you're about to understand." By Wednesday, the office felt different. People avoided eye contact. Meetings were canceled. Projects stalled. The systems I once ran quietly were now very loud in their absence. HR emailed again, asking for documentation of my responsibilities. I sent everything. Clean. Time-stamped. Organized. I had nothing to hide. That afternoon, the new hire approached me. He looked uncomfortable. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said. I kept my voice gentle. "So do I." He nodded and walked away. An hour later, his badge stopped working. My boss called an emergency meeting. He spoke fast, blaming delays on technical issues and team resistance. No one asked questions. No one volunteered solutions. Because they all knew. At 4:45 p.m., IT disabled more access, this time company-wide. The permissions couldn't be restored without my approval. That approval required my role to exist. My boss stormed out of the meeting and went straight to legal. I packed my things again, just in case. As I left, my phone buzzed with one new email. Subject: Formal Review of Management Conduct. I smiled for the first time all week. By Monday, someone else would be locked out. Thursday morning, I was called into a conference room with HR and legal. My boss arrived late. His tie was crooked, and his smile looked forced. Legal asked me to explain my role. I did, step by step. I explained what systems I managed, what approvals I held, and what happened when those were removed. I spoke slowly and clearly. My boss interrupted. "She's exaggerating." Legal raised a hand. "Let her finish." That felt new. HR asked why I didn't train the new hire fully. I slid a printed email across the table. It showed my boss saying my role would end Friday and that training was optional. The room went quiet. Legal asked my boss if he approved the message. He said yes. Then they asked if he understood what single holder access meant in my contract. He hesitated. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Legal explained that removing my role without transferring access broke internal policy and external agreements. It also caused the shutdown. My boss leaned back, suddenly pale. The meeting ended without a decision. HR said they needed time. As I stood up, legal stopped me. "Please don't make any system changes." I nodded. "I haven't all week." Walking out, I realized something important. They weren't asking me to fix things anymore. They were trying to contain him. Friday came, and the office felt hollow. Desks were empty. Emails went unanswered. Clients were waiting. Every delay traced back to one missing approval. Mine. My boss didn't come in. Instead, HR asked me to work from home until things settled. I agreed. It gave me space to think. Around noon, I received a forwarded message by mistake. It was my boss, writing to senior leadership, blaming me for sabotage. I replied only to HR and legal. I attached my contract. I highlighted one clause. It said any removal of my role without notice triggered an automatic review and temporary suspension of system access for management. I hadn't written it. I hadn't enforced it. The system did. By afternoon, leadership scheduled an emergency call. My boss joined late again. His voice was sharp, blaming process and timing. Legal asked him why he ignored the clause. He said he thought it wasn't active. Legal corrected him. It's always active. Silence filled the call. When it ended, HR stayed behind with me. We're reopening your position, they said carefully. I thanked them. But inside, I knew this wasn't over. Because reopening my role wasn't the same as fixing what he'd done. Monday morning, I logged in with full access restored. Everything worked. Too well. I could see every delay, every override, every rushed decision my boss made to cover his tracks. HR asked me to document impacts. I did more than that. I documented patterns, missed approvals, changed records, instructions sent verbally to avoid email trails. By lunch, legal asked for a private call. They wanted clarification on dates. I gave them exact times. Then they asked if I'd be willing to speak during a formal review. I said yes. That afternoon, my boss finally called me. His voice was softer now. We don't need to make this bigger than it is. I replied, you already did. He sighed. What do you want? I thought for a moment. The truth on record. He didn't answer. An hour later, HR sent a calendar invite titled Management Accountability Review. My name was listed as a key witness. He wasn't. As I closed my laptop, I felt calm. Not relieved. Not excited. Just steady. Because by training my replacement, I had taught the company how fragile his control really was. And soon, they would see it for themselves. The review meeting was set for Tuesday morning. I arrived early, even though it was virtual. My notes were organized by date, time, and impact. I didn't plan to argue. I planned to show. HR opened the meeting. Legal joined next. Senior leadership followed. My boss logged in last. He didn't look at the camera. They asked me to explain the shutdown in simple terms. I explained how access worked, who approved what, and what happened when approvals vanished. Then I shared my screen. I showed emails where my boss rushed changes. I showed messages where he told teams to move fast, without sign-off. I showed the timeline where my role was cut before systems were transferred. No one interrupted. When I finished, leadership asked my boss to respond. He said I was technically correct, but emotionally difficult. He said he had to make hard choices. He said pressure came from above. Legal asked him to name who gave those instructions. He couldn't. HR asked why he told me to train a replacement before removing access. He said it was standard. Legal corrected him. It's not. The meeting ended with leadership asking for a break. As screens went dark, I realized something had shifted. For the first time, he wasn't in charge of the room. After the break, leadership returned with a different tone. Calm. Focused. Serious. They asked my boss to step off the call. He protested. HR muted him. Then leadership spoke to me directly. They asked if I felt pressure to stay silent. I said yes. They asked if I feared retaliation. I said yes. They nodded like they expected it. Legal explained they found inconsistencies between my boss's reports and system logs. They said the risk exposure was higher than expected. HR asked if I still wanted my role back. I said I wanted clarity. They promised a full review. An hour later, I received an email restoring my title and compensation. Another email followed, placing my boss on temporary leave pending review. The office reacted fast. Messages poured in. Some coworkers apologized. Others stayed quiet. That afternoon, HR asked me to help stabilize operations. I agreed, but only with everything in writing. They said yes. As I worked, I noticed something strange. Several approvals my boss claimed were urgent were never needed at all. They were shortcuts. That night, legal emailed again. They found a second clause in my contract. One I hadn't noticed. It covered liability, and it pointed directly at him. The next day, legal counsel walked me through the clause. It said any manager who forced non-compliant actions shifted responsibility to themselves. My boss had signed that too. They asked if I followed his instructions. I said yes and showed proof. Emails, calendar invites, messages sent late at night. Legal thanked me. HR informed me the review expanded. It now included audit and compliance. By noon, my boss's access was limited. He couldn't approve expenses. He couldn't message teams. He couldn't enter systems he once controlled. People noticed. Rumors spread fast, but I stayed quiet. I worked. I documented. I followed rules exactly. That afternoon, a senior leader called me. She asked if I planned to leave the company. I said no. I planned to stay where I'm respected. She said they wanted that too. Later, HR sent another update. My boss would not return to his role during the review. I closed my laptop and leaned back. I thought about Friday when he told me to train my replacement. I had done exactly that. I trained the company to run without him. And now, they were proving they could. Monday morning, security protocols changed. My badge worked everywhere. His worked nowhere. HR announced interim leadership. The tone was careful but clear. We are correcting past decisions. I was asked to brief the new lead. She listened. She took notes. She asked smart questions. At the end, she said, "You should have been protected." That meant more than any apology. Later that day, legal requested one final statement. They wanted my full timeline in my own words. I gave it to them. That evening, my boss emailed me from a personal account. He apologized. He said he was under pressure. He asked me to help smooth things over. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to legal. They responded within minutes. Thank you. The next morning, HR sent a company-wide message. My boss was officially removed. No reasons given. Just a quiet end. I sat at my desk, calm again. He told me to train my replacement. What he didn't understand was this. I wasn't training a person. I was training the system to survive without him. And by Monday, he was the one locked out. The office felt different after he was removed. Quieter, but heavier. People watched what they said. Emails were careful. Meetings ended on time. HR asked me to attend a leadership sync. I wasn't invited before. Now, my name was on the calendar like it belonged there. They talked about damage control, about trust, about lessons learned. I listened. When it was my turn, I spoke clearly. I said the problem wasn't one bad boss. It was silent. It was fear. It was rewarding loyalty over honesty. No one argued. After the meeting, a coworker pulled me aside. She whispered that my boss had done this before. She said others trained replacements too, but they left quietly. I asked why no one spoke up. She said, "We didn't think it would matter." That night, legal called again. They uncovered older complaints buried in closed files. Different teams. Same pattern. They asked if I was willing to cooperate fully. I said yes, because now I understood something. This wasn't just about my job or my bonus. It was about how many people were pushed out before me, and how many never got the chance to fight back. The audit moved fast. Faster than anyone expected. Legal asked me to walk them through past projects. I showed where decisions changed after approvals, where timelines were shortened without reason. They matched my notes to records. Everything lined up. HR asked me how I handled the pressure. I told them the truth. I said I cried in my car. I said I felt replaceable. I said I stayed because I needed the job. They didn't interrupt. Later that week, leadership announced a policy review. New rules for access changes. New checks for terminations. My name was listed as a contributor. That felt strange. Then something unexpected happened. A former coworker reached out. She said she had been let go last year after training someone new. She said she saved emails but never used them. She asked if it was too late. I forwarded her message to legal. They replied that same night. "Please connect with us." I realized then that the story was bigger than me. It was spreading. And the company was no longer trying to hide it. They were trying to fix it. But I knew the hardest part was still coming. Because accountability was next. The board meeting was scheduled quietly. No company-wide notice. Just a few invites. Mine was one of them. Legal told me they wanted first-hand voices, not summaries. I prepared carefully. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't soften the truth either. When it was my turn, I spoke slowly. I described the Friday meeting, the replacement, the access cuts, the pressure to stay grateful. I watched faces change. One board member asked why my boss wasn't stopped sooner. Legal answered before I could. They said systems failed. Oversight failed. Silence followed. Then another board member asked me what I wanted now. The question surprised me. I said I wanted fairness. I wanted safety. I wanted no one else told to train their replacement without protection. They nodded. After the meeting, the legal pulled me aside. They said the board approved corrective actions. Not just against my boss, but against leadership that ignored warning signs. That night, HR emailed an update. Severance packages were offered to affected employees. Reinstatements were discussed. My boss's name was removed from internal directories completely. No farewell. No announcement. Just gone. But I knew this wasn't the end. Because consequences were still unfolding. And some people were nervous. The final review report came out on a Friday afternoon. Quiet timing. Strategic. It confirmed misconduct. Abuse of authority. Retaliation. No names were listed publicly. But internally everyone knew. HR called me one last time. They thanked me for my professionalism. They offered a new role. Same team. More authority. Clear protections. I accepted. That evening, I packed up my desk. Not to leave, but to reset. Old notes. Old stress. I threw away what I didn't need. As I left, I passed my boss's old office. The door was locked. Lights off. Nameplate gone. I felt no joy. Just relief. Later that night, I checked my email one more time. A message sat unread, sent earlier that day. It was from my boss. Short. Careful. He said, I never thought you'd push this far. I stared at the screen. Then I closed my laptop. Because he was wrong. I didn't push far. I stood still. And let the truth catch up to him. Monday morning felt unreal. My badge still worked. My email is loaded. But everything else had changed. People nodded when I passed. Some smiled. Some looked away. I understood both. Legal scheduled a final call. They said the company reached a settlement with several former employees. Quiet. Clean. No public mess. They also confirmed my bonus was approved. Paid in full. Backdated. That part mattered, but not the most. What mattered was the policy updates sent company-wide. Clear rules. Clear protections. No more training replacements without written guarantees. I saved the email. Later, my new manager checked in. She asked what support I needed. She listened. She didn't rush me. That was new. At lunch, a coworker admitted she almost quit last year. She said watching this made her stay. I felt the weight of that. That evening, I received another message. Not from my former boss, but from someone higher up. They asked if I'd help review training materials for managers. I agreed. Because if I was going to stay, I wanted things to be better. But deep down, I knew something else was coming. People don't lose power quietly. And the ones who do often try one last move. The request came midweek. A meeting invite. Private. No agenda. I hesitated, then accepted. Legal joined first. Then HR. Then someone I hadn't seen before, senior leadership. They asked if I had more documentation. I did. I shared saved messages. Calendar changes. System logs showing access cuts before notice. Silence followed. Legal thanked me. The meeting ended quickly. An hour later, HR emailed an update. The appeal was denied. I sat back and breathed out. That night, I thought about how close I came to walking away. How easy it would have been to train the replacement and disappear. Instead, I stayed. The next day, the company announced leadership changes. Again, no names. But everyone understood. My inbox is filled with messages. Some thanked me. Some asked how I stayed calm. I didn't answer right away. Because calm wasn't what saved me. Preparation did. And the story still wasn't over. The offer arrived Friday morning. A promotion. New title. Clear scope. Written protections. I read every word. Legal walked me through the clauses. No vague language. No loopholes. I signed. Later that day, I was asked to speak at a small internal forum. Just managers. Just honesty. I told them what it felt like to be told to train my replacement. How fear makes people quiet. How silence protects the wrong people. No one interrupted. Afterward, someone admitted they'd ignored warning signs before. They thanked me for forcing change. That stayed with me. That evening, I packed my work bag lighter than usual. I felt steady. As I left, my phone buzzed. A final message from my former boss. He said, "You didn't have to ruin everything." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because nothing was ruined. What was broken had already been broken. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. And I knew the final chapter wasn't about him. It was about what I chose next. Monday marked a full month since that Friday. I walked into the office with my head up. Not because I won, but because I learned. I learned that contracts matter. That quiet notes matter. That waiting doesn't mean weakness. HR closed the case officially. Legal thanked me again. The audit wrapped. Life moved on. But something else happened. A new hire asked me for advice. She said she'd been told to be grateful before. She wanted to know what that really meant. I told her the truth. Be grateful for clarity. For records. For knowing your worth. Not for being mistreated. That afternoon, I updated my files one last time. I didn't need them anymore, but I kept them. Just in case. As I shut down my computer, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't scared. I was ready. Because the job didn't define me. Silence didn't protect me. And the moment I stopped training my replacement, I started training myself to never be replaceable again. 2 weeks later, I was called into a meeting I didn't ask for. This time, it wasn't tense. Legal, HR, and senior leadership were already seated. They said the internal audit was complete. They thanked me again, but this time their tone was different. Careful. Respectful. They confirmed my former boss had officially left the company. Not transferred. Not reassigned. Gone. They also shared something else. The replacement I was asked to train. His offer had been pulled once the audit revealed how rushed and dishonest the transition was. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. He didn't deserve to be part of someone else's bad plan. They asked if I wanted to help shape a new transition policy. One that protected employees from being pushed out quietly. I said yes. After the meeting, I sat alone for a moment. I thought about that Friday. The fear. The way my voice shook. It felt far away now. That afternoon, a company-wide email announced leadership changes and new rules. Clear ones. People stopped by my desk. Some smiled. Some just nodded. I knew what they meant. The truth had weight, and it had finally landed. Change didn't come all at once. It came in small moments. A manager asked before assigning extra work. HR followed up instead of ignoring complaints. Meetings felt honest instead of staged. I noticed everything. One afternoon, I was invited to help train managers, not replacements. Leaders. I shared what it felt like to be dismissed. To be told to be grateful while being pushed out. No one laughed. No one checked their phone. That mattered. Later that week, I received my updated contract. Clear language. Clear protections. I read it twice. I signed without fear. At home that night, I packed away the notebook where I tracked every detail. I didn't throw it out. I placed it in a drawer. Not as a weapon, but as proof. Proof that silence isn't peace. Proof that preparation works. A message popped up from a coworker who had already left the company. She said she heard what happened. She said she wished she had stayed long enough to fight. I understood her choice. But I also understood mine. Standing up didn't make me loud. It made me free. And I finally felt like myself again. On my first day in the new role, I arrived early. The office felt calm. Different. I reviewed files, met with my team, and set clear expectations. No surprises. No games. Later, I passed the old office where my former boss used to sit. The door was empty now. The nameplate gone. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. At lunch, someone asked if I felt like I'd won. I thought about it. Winning wasn't the point. Respect was. That afternoon, HR rolled out the new transition policy. Employees were required to get written terms before training anyone new. No exceptions. I saved the document. Toward the end of the day, I received a message from leadership. They said the company avoided a major lawsuit because of the records I kept. They said I protected more people than I knew. I sat quietly after reading that. For the first time, I felt proud. Not because I beat someone, but because I didn't let fear decide for me. As I shut down my computer, I realized the power shift wasn't loud. It was permanent. And the final chapter wasn't about revenge. It was about choice. Friday came again. But this time it felt light. I walked out of the building with steady steps, knowing Monday would bring opportunity, not fear. I thought back to the moment I was told to train my replacement. How small I felt. How trapped. I wasn't that person anymore. I learned that contracts matter. That notes matter. That calm beats panic every time. Most of all, I learned that power doesn't always sit at the top. Sometimes it sits with the person who pays attention. The company didn't change overnight. No system ever does. But it cracked. And cracks let light in. That night, I deleted the last email thread tied to that moment. I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't running. I was moving forward. My boss once told me to be grateful. He was right about one thing. I was grateful. Grateful I didn't walk away quietly. Grateful I didn't train myself out of a future. And grateful I learned this lesson before it cost me everything. By Monday, he was locked out. But by then, I was already free.